Hello, thank you for joining me. If you're wondering why I'm making these kind of basic live stream broadcasts, it's not really because I wanted to do a live stream, but uh, some of my patients had asked me, you know, they had suggested that I make some more videos of just me talking about different related subjects to, to my practice. And it's much easier to do it this way, and they get saved on YouTube, and then I can maybe go edit and republish later. But yeah, it's just a convenient way to get the video out there. But anyway, so I've talked about some medical scientific stuff up till now, and I was thinking about the topic of spirituality, which is interesting, and it's a sensitive subject because some patients are strictly religious, and their religion may not approve of what might be considered New Age spirituality, or they may even disapprove of very specific practices. For example, the Catholic Church frowns upon the practice of Reiki. Reiki is a healing art, which there's some question about the validity of it. There's been studies that show, and Reiki's, I've actually not observed someone performing it. I've known people that claim that it's helped them, but I think it's something where the practitioner does not touch the patient. They kind of wave their hands over the patient in a very specific way, and it provides relief, and there's a belief that there's energy fields involved and transfer of energy, and I think Qi, which would be QI, spelled QI, I think, and maybe chakras are involved. So these are things that are, sort of Eastern philosophy, and maybe in the U.S. some New Age spiritual type beliefs mixed in, and just for example, the Catholic Church specifically is against Reiki. It's I think it was at least at one time a banned practice. That members of the church were forbidden to be involved with getting that treatment or practicing the treatment. Now yoga is, and I did a podcast interview with someone who is a yoga instructor and also a Reiki master, and I had asked about that. I said, well, isn't Reiki not approved by the Catholic Church? And she said, well, same with yoga. The Catholic Church doesn't approve of yoga. So I looked that up, and I think it's a kind of a more nuanced view from the church. The yoga has the exercise part of it, where you're just practicing the stretching and the positions and using it like a form of exercise and stretching, stress relief. And there's some scientific basis, research showing yoga is helpful. I mean, we know that stretching is helpful, and in a lot of cases they recommend that athletes stretch, and people with muscle tension, stretching can help. But there's also a spiritual side to yoga, and so I think that the Catholic Church is against the spiritual part of it because that's not consistent with their teachings, but they're a little bit more open to the pure exercise side of it. And then some church leaders may believe that once you've gotten into the exercise only side of yoga, that might draw you into the spiritual side of it, which they don't like the idea of that. But so when a doctor is dealing with a patient, and if they feel that it might be helpful to the patient, which going through something like benzodiazepine-induced neurological dysfunction or bind, going through different kinds of substance dependencies, anything from alcohol to opioids to stimulants, and any kind of addiction, like even non-substance addictions like gambling, work addiction, food addiction, that spirituality can be helpful. In fact, there's programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Spirituality is a part of those programs, and someone might call that form of spirituality like a kind of like a New Age spirituality, because they do talk about a higher power that's in the 12 steps, believing in a higher power, but not a specific higher power. So not, they're not telling you to believe in, the God of a particular church or something like that. But so you basically pick your own God, and it doesn't have to even be any kind of a God. There's people that'll say, well, a doorknob can be your higher power, if that makes sense to you. But anyway, so spirituality is important, but I think it's important that the doctor kind of realize, they should understand where the patient's coming from, what their beliefs are. A patient could be an atheist, a patient could be a Muslim, a Christian there's a wide variety of Christian beliefs, Catholic, which is a form of Christianity. They could be Jewish, and I think there's a wide variety of other religious beliefs, and in some cases, think New Age or Eastern philosophy might not be consistent. So talking about, when you talk about mindfulness, being in the present moment, that seems almost like it shouldn't even be a spiritual thing. I think it's a practical thing. And things like gratitude, keeping a list of what you're grateful for, just being aware of gratitude, at times of the day or all the time, being grateful that the things that you have in your life, family, your health, and in fact, that's actually a part of those recovery programs also. But it's one of those things that there is some scientific support for. Actually, I know that for forgiveness, where you forgive yourself for things and you forgive people in your life, that actually there's been some studies of brain waves and improvement in relaxation and positive brain waves with gratitude. And I think there is the same with forgiveness, but I think it might be the same with gratitude. So that's something to look up. So I've had some patients bring up specific spiritual leaders that you might call them kind of pop psychology or pop spirituality, New Age spirituality. But there's some, at least some good, and like one of my patients really loves the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, and I learned more about what his teachings are, and was thinking, I don't know, maybe there's more to it that some people might disagree with, in certain circles of, maybe that his spiritual teachings don't go with their beliefs. But he talks a lot about mindfulness and being in the moment and really being aware of physical sensations. He talks about something at some point. He talked about folding clothes and being aware of the texture of the clothes, to with his fingers touching them as he folded them, and kind of taking joy in the act of folding clothes. That seems like a positive thing to me. And you don't have to believe in anything. You don't have to believe in a universal mind or any kind of magical connection with people or with the earth, or like all the different New Age spiritual beliefs. You can be present in the moment and focus on the moment and not think about the future or the past, and that seems like it would be helpful regardless of beliefs, and doesn't have to even be considered a spiritual thing. Something I was thinking about, which is not really a spiritual thing, but talking about things that might be considered pseudoscience or not. I've had some patients that tell me that they used a grounding blanket or a grounding sheet or grounding pad. One patient has he and his wife have a very fancy set of grounding sheets. A grounding sheet would be like a sheet you put in your bed, but you plug into an electrical outlet, and it doesn't connect to the electrical power source, but it connects only to the grounding. Like when you have a 3-prong outlet, that lower third prong, kind of the wider rounded one, is just for grounding. And there is some scientific basis for that. And you should have good electrical wiring in your house. They say don't use it if you have dirty electricity. But if you have that, if you have an electrical problem, you should really have an electrician work on your wiring and get that fixed, because that's important also. But But these grounding products apparently there is some scientific basis for it, and there's something with voltage and negative ions and demonstrated health benefits, including regulating the circadian rhythm and cortisol. And cortisol release in the morning can be something that causes problems for people in bind, benzodiazepine-induced neurological dysfunction, where they have that cortisol surge in the morning, and that can trigger symptoms. So anything that might help with that, even a little bit, is valuable. And apparently the best way to ground is to just go outside and with your bare feet stand on the grass and have an actual connection to the earth. And that's not just a new age spiritual pseudoscience belief, but there's some actual science to that you're grounding your body electrically, and there can be physical benefits to that. But it's not always practical to go out and stand barefoot in the grass. So second best, you can get a grounding sheet or a grounding blanket, grounding pad, something in this category, and they're not too expensive. I've looked them up on Amazon, and you can get them on Amazon Prime, for example, and if you don't like it, send it back. It's something worth trying. They don't look like they're extremely expensive, and you can get it pretty quickly or return it if you don't like it. I can't recommend a specific brand or kind, because I'm not. I know there are people that prefer maybe a certain brand, but something to look into. And it's one of those things that almost certainly can't hurt, and it could be helpful. And things that are in that category, not harmful, possibly helpful, are worth trying. So that's not quite in the realm of spirituality, but it's just one of those things. When you think of someone says you need to be grounded, go outside and connect to the earth, it does seem kind of like a new age spiritual thing, but there is some scientific basis for it. It's definitely worth doing a little research and seeing what kinds of studies have been done, and how many subjects were in the studies, and where was it published. It was in a peer-reviewed medical journal or scientific journal. Of course, now we have some great research tools, so people can look these things up. Anyway, that's all I have to say for today. So